What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Game Chamber. And today we're talking about the latest release from Marvel and PlayStation's collaboration, Spider-Man 2, one of, if not the most anticipated gaming release this year. Now, to set the stage, I am a massive Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man and Batman have always been my two favorite comic book characters. I adored the first Spider-Man game. You can actually check out my review of that original game up here. It was on my movie channel, but nonetheless, it's kind of the same style. Loved that game. Couple of small issues here and there. Thought that maybe some of the side missions were a bit repetitive, but loved the story, loved the web swinging and the combat. It was a Spider-Man fan's dream. And ever since I stopped at the end of that incredible story of the first game, I have been dying to see how they were going to follow that up. They had teased Venom. There was a number of things still kind of lingering around that I definitely wanted to see expanded upon. And ever since they released the first teaser trailer at one of those PlayStation State of Plays, I have been dying to play this game. Well, I did a number of live streams. I think it was 6 live streams in total. 100% of the game, got the platinum. I've seen everything that this game has to offer, and now it is time to talk about Spider-Man 2 and whether it lived up to my huge hype and expectations. Starting right off with the positives, I thought the story in this game was just as good, if not even better than the story of the first one. These two games together, and hopefully by the time we get to the 3rd chapter and have a completed trilogy, are among the best Spider-Man stories that I have ever seen. Taking some familiar territory, taking some very popular comic book storylines, even some storyline angles that we've seen explored in some of the movies, and doing something very different with them, which is the key. Respecting the past, respecting the source material, but evolving it and doing something different and unique with it. And the way that they blended the storylines of the Black Spider-Man suit and Venom's arrival and the symbiote's arrival with Kraven's last hunt, I thought was just awesome. And just like the first game, it's very much a story of 3 acts, where the first act is all about Kraven's arrival to New York and Harry coming along and him kind of arriving back into the lives of Peter and MJ, and all of those things kind of tied together. Second act is the arrival of the Black Spider-Man suit as it leaves Harry's body and grafts to Peter. And then the 3rd act is all about Venom and the symbiotes taking over New York. Very different acts of this game, but all 3 of them work perfectly together to tell one incredible story. And of course, the voice acting, the motion capture, all of that in regards to bringing these characters to life was amazing. Tony Todd's voice as Venom, I mean, I didn't even need to see the teaser and hear just that little bit of Tony Todd in that to know that that was going to be a fucking magnificent choice.
We're going to heal the world.
But from the moment that the symbiote regrafts itself to Harry and we get Venom and Tony Todd's voice starts to come out, every single line that Venom had just gave me chills. That was one of the best voice castings I have ever seen for a video game.
Miles, I'm not seeing a rock. No? Hold on, I'm nearly to you.
Thanks for coming, Pete. We want to show you something.
And even just the individual story arcs that are woven into this story, with Kraven very much a dying man trying to find that hunt, that fight that is going to let him have that honorable death. And then going on to our protagonist with Harry showing up into the lives of Peter and MJ again, having this long-lost friend that, of course, Spider-Man fans know the history of, but if you're only following in the story and the timeline of these games, is a brand new character, and so you're kind of playing catch-up with the past. You get a little bit of flashback sequences here and there to fill out their past friendship, and then very much the struggle of Harry dying and having this disease, but also having the struggle of the symbiote suit that gives him power, that's keeping him alive, but is also corrupting him from within slowly and surely. And then even more so here with Peter's character arc, where he gets the black suit, and even faster and more so than it was with Harry, is corrupting him from within and making him a vengeful, angry, and violent Spider-Man, and making him vengeful towards the people in his life. And the whole thing is, yet again, pretty classic Spider-Man theme, but him trying to balance who is Peter Parker and who is Spider-Man, and how do I win as Spider-Man without losing as Peter Parker, and him trying to balance out his needs as a hero of New York with his needs as a human being with his girlfriend, his best friend, and just his livelihood. And also very much wrestling with the events of the first game and the death of Aunt May and him choosing to save the citizens of New York over the person that arguably he loved and cared about the most, and him very much having that weight on his shoulders while trying to hide it and ignore it, and how that kind of evolves into how he is using the black suit and how he eventually wants to save Harry. He doesn't want to have another death on his hands in order to do the right thing. And then of course Miles Morales, who is the secondary Spider-Man, who we got the little spin-off game at the launch of PS5, and now he's kind of the co-lead in Spider-Man 2, and you will switch back and forth from these characters at will whenever you're doing like the open world side of things. Throughout the story, it will switch focus from one character to the other. It balances it perfectly. I was a little bit worried about that. Am I going to feel like I'm losing out on Peter's storyline in favor of Miles or vice versa? And not at all. And Miles is going through a lot of what we've seen Peter Parker go through in the past, to where he's trying to rise up to the occasion of being this new hero and maturing as a hero and trying to figure out how to balance his life of a hero as well as just regular Miles Morales stuff, and his relationship with his mother after his father's death, and his relationship with his uncle after revealing him as the Prowler, and having love for the first time, and keeping a friendship with Genki, and all of those things. And so they do an incredible job story-wise and character-wise in this sequel of expanding on everything that came before it, pushing it into very welcome new directions, and keeping a balance on every character here telling this amazing story. Moving over into the gameplay, basically everything I said about the first game, but better. The web swinging is just as good, but it's a bit faster, it's a bit more adrenaline fueled, and there's different settings you can have on how realistic you want it to be. I left the setting at 10, which is stock right out of the box, and I thought it was incredible that way. It was a lot of fun, it was challenging at times, but you really do get the feeling of being Spider-Man, which is something that everybody wants. I don't care if you're a comic book fan or not, everybody wants to be Spider-Man at some point. This game lets you be Spider-Man. The combat is great. It's very much like the first game. You get some expanded combos, you get some symbiote moves, which is really cool, and a few little additions here as you're building up meters and getting certain takedown moves that are a lot of fun. And even the stealthier side of things, when you're trying to crawl around on the walls, or you're trying to stay in the shadows and take people out silently and web them up like cocoons. That's among my favorite parts of these games, because I've always been more of a stealth-drawn person, like Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cell and even the Arkham games. So when I have the opportunity to do that, I like doing it, and this game does it well. And one of the biggest additions to this sequel from the first game, which already felt pretty huge, is that this game's scale is massive. Like, all of New York essentially is your open world. It is so much bigger and so much more expansive than it was in the first game. Even just the scale of the action sequences and like the very first boss fight, Sandman, that introduces you to this game feels incredibly huge. And there's certain sequences where you're swinging all throughout New York chasing down a villain. In the gameplay that was shown not too long ago before the game's release, where you're chasing Kraven's boats and his helicopters, and you're swinging through bridges and swinging over the river and switching Spider-Man throughout the story. All of that is just so massive scale that so easily, in lesser hands, they could have lost sight of the smaller things like the story or a lot of the emotions of these characters. But Insomniac has just become masters at this point of having huge scale, having unbelievable graphics, having so much more gameplay mechanics than their previous games, while always keeping the focus on what's important. Something that they definitely did better in this one as opposed to the first game is I felt like the side missions and the busy work, if you will, of the game outside of the main storyline was much better here, and there was a lot more diversity in the missions. There was these little experiment missions you have with Harry where you're trying to put these plant genomes together. You'll have missions where you're taking down little Kraven Hunter outposts, or you're chasing their little robotic birds through a bunch of checkpoints, and a very fast-paced side mission that will give you head spins if you're not paying attention. You have side stories like Yuri and the Flame, and things that both come to their conclusion that have to do with the main storyline, as well as set up things to be explored in Spider-Man 3. Cannot wait for that. But whereas the last game I felt like they just got really redundant going through the same side missions over and over, here right when I got to that point with a particular side mission, I would have it completed. I would get whatever bonus suit or whatever was the reward for that, and then something else would open up. And I briefly mentioned it talking about the gameplay, but graphically this game is immaculate. This is one of those games that will sell consoles and will show you why the PS5 is such an incredible piece of equipment. And Insomniac more or less has become that company for PlayStation. While Naughty Dog is doing whatever the hell Naughty Dog's been doing, they were kind of that company for them for a while. Insomniac, both with Spider-Man last year, Miles Morales at the launch of the console, and now Spider-Man 2 is the flagship video game developer for PlayStation, showing you the full potential of what the console can do at the time. Moving on to the mixed aspects, I felt like the boss battles were just okay in this game. Like, they're all fun. The actual characters you're going against, they have a good balance of challenge. The first opening one with Sandman I thought was great, and there was a number of other ones that were pretty good throughout it too, but after a while it just kind of felt like beat 'em ups. You know, it was just, let's just keep punching and webbing this guy as his life goes down. And I wish there was a little bit more of a variety in the things that are going on, mixing in like quick time elements or setting changes or all of the different things that you got in that Sandman fight, where it was this big, expansive, massive scale fight. It didn't have to be that big the whole game, but I wanted more than just one static little arena and you just punch the dude until you get the cutscene. And that seemed to be what we got more times than not. Again, not bad boss fights by any means, but I felt like, especially in the second half of the game when it gets very boss battle heavy, that there was a bit of redundancy there. The other mixed element I have is the addition of a parry mechanic here, where before you just had the dodge mechanic and everything was underneath that, where you get the little spidey sense indicator and you have a certain amount of time to press circle to dodge it or jump over them or do something, and if you perfectly time it, you could shoot a web at them as you move. It was a really fluid part of the first game. And in here, they implement a parry mechanic to where it's the same exact indicator, but the colors are just slightly different. Instead of getting red, it will turn yellow. And to me, my brain could never figure out the difference between parry and dodge, because the game is so fast-paced, especially the combat, and you're moving at breakneck pace, trying to punch this guy, web this person, dodge this person, and you're watching like sometimes 9-10 characters on screen at a time, that the parry indicator always made my brain press circle. I don't know if that was just me, you know, maybe I need to get good, as they say, but I felt like there wasn't enough of a visual difference to indicate a parry over a dodge, that I would say more than half of the time I was supposed to parry, I would fuck that up. And I just felt like that was something that should be improved in the future. If you want to do parry, that's fine, but there needs to be a little bit more of a visual difference, because as somebody who's pretty damn good at video games by my own admission, maybe my own vanity, that was a struggle. Moving on to the negatives. First of all, and this is something that's probably going to go away very quickly if they haven't already fixed it, there was a number of bugs and glitches and crashes that I encountered during my 6 live streams playing this game. Now, that's not something that's going to take away from the experience now that you have modern consoles that can reboot the game very quickly. I mean, you're losing 20 seconds when the game crashes before you reboot it and get right back to wherever the hell you were, so not as big of a deal as it used to be a few console generations ago. And I had a variety of glitches that were pretty much all in the middle sections of this game. Didn't have any issues in the first few hours, but then I had a whole segment after a cutscene to where the background noise of New York just cut out and you would only have the noises that you were making as Spider-Man, and that wouldn't go away till I reset the game. I had got stuck in a wall a number of times. I also had a time where after using Miles's lightning power, his suit just continuously flashed lightning for like 5 minutes. I was thinking maybe I had unlocked some new power and it was waiting for me to just discharge it, but it didn't go away until, again, I reset the game. Small things, not a gigantic deal, did not take away from my experience, but when you're gonna launch a game, especially when it's high profile as this, and there's still things like that left in, gotta dock you for it. Also didn't love some of these slower gameplay elements that were here. Like the MJ missions I thought were significantly better than the first game, but they're still among the least interesting parts of the game to me. But even more so than that, even more egregious than the MJ stuff is like the bicycling segments, which I absolutely hated the controls for. And even some of the walking sim exposition dump sequences where you're just walking as characters and you're being forced to listen to dialogue to kind of flesh out the character arcs and the relationships and part of the story more. Important stuff narratively, but there was a bit too much of it, especially in the second half of the game when things have been ramped up so much to where the story pacing feels like it's at a breakneck pace, and the timing of your events are supposed to be ultra critical, but the game will pause and you'll just kind of walk around and hang out at a fair. And it just felt a little odd narratively for me. Again, gameplay segments that I didn't despise by any means. I thought they were all fine, but when I'm swinging through the sky and I'm chasing down bad guys and everything is just so breakneck paced and frantic, those elements just felt like a big pacing issue. And my final negative is that I still felt like, despite the side missions getting a really nice upgrade and having a lot more variety to them, the random crimes that happen throughout the city that you continuously have to stop in order to build your character out and in order to complete a segment of the map and, of course, to unlock certain things throughout the game, those were still incredibly redundant because there was only like a variety of 4 or 5 of them. Either somebody's getting beat up and mugged, or there's the people with the flamethrowers shooting flames at a tanker, or there's a car that's running amok that you have to stop. I wish they would have expanded that a bit more because it essentially felt like they just carried that over from the first game and did nothing with it. Overall, guys, I thought this game was amazing. To me, this, outside of Batman Arkham City, which is still my #1, this is the best comic book-based video game that I have ever played. And I have every confidence that Spider-Man 3 has the potential to be the greatest one ever made, unless Batman gets off his ass and makes a 4th game. But gameplay was amazing, graphics were amazing, the story was so satisfying as a Spider-Man fan, and expanding on the first game, telling a really nice narrative with everything that they were exploring here, and setting up some really cool things for the future. And so it essentially gave me every single thing that I wanted, plus more. As a Spider-Man fan, I'm on cloud 9 with what they gave in Spider-Man 2, and it's absolutely one of the best games of the year. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for a playlist of other games that I have reviewed so far in this year. I'm also going to put my review of the original Spider-Man if you want to check that out now that the review is over. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what is coming in the future of the Game Chamber. We got Alan Wake 2 and RoboCop that I'm trying to play right now. And as always, remember, the Game Chamber is Commander Shepard's favorite channel on the YouTubes.